News Talk ZB, hello, good morning. This is Fishing with Crimpy. I'm Regan and here's your host, Mr. Daryl Crimp.
Very good morning, and we have a special guest today, which we have one every week, really, don't we?
We do.
Normally don't introduce them at this point in the show.
No.
But I have to introduce him now, Ali Kennard from ENL, Electronic Navigation Limited. Good morning.
Good morning. I feel privileged to be introduced so early.
Well, I only did it because you insulted me when I walked into the studio.
You did walk in wearing slippers.
Yeah, and you were saying, is that a sign of old age?
Yeah, but the answer to that was, what? I couldn't say it again, Sonny.
Well, he was talking into the ear that didn't have the hearing aid. Speaking of old people, it was dear old friends of mine. You know, I mean, age is nothing to joke about because it gets to us in the end. But a married couple got old and infirm and a little bit mentally impaired, so they were put away in a sort of like, I suppose you can't call them mental institutions, but that's basically what it was. And they were looked after, 24-hour watch. And the old fella, they did everything together, and they went to the pool one day, and he just, clothes and all, just stepped into the swimming pool and sunk straight to the bottom, sat right on the bottom. And the old girl looked down at him and thought he's jumped into the swimming pool with his clothes on. So she leapt straight in after him, and she sunk to the bottom. But she had the foresight to pick him up, drag him to the shallow end, and lift him out. Now, they heard that, the management heard of that, and they suddenly realised that, well, she's obviously improving. She's not mentally infirm after all. So they called her aside one day, and they said, look, we've got some good news and some bad news. And she said, well, what's the good news? She said, well, the good news is obviously that you were able to think rationally when your husband fell into the pool. You thought the process through, you leapt in and you saved him, so you're not mentally infirm, so that you have full mental capacity so you can go home. She said, that's wonderful, what's the bad news? She said, well, after you saved your husband, he hung himself in the cloakroom by his belt. And she said, he didn't hang him. She says, I hung him up there to dry, when can I go home? Right, moving on to fishing. There's bound to be some complaints coming up. Please hold off the calls just at the moment. On the news, Tour.
Tour, the humble Tour.
Well, could be a big earner.
Apparently so. I don't know if you saw this on the telebox. It's also on our Facebook site. Currently, the surf clams industry earns about $10 million a year, but the fishery has the potential to earn about 40 times more than that. So we're talking, $300 to $400 million a year. So what they're doing now is they've realised that the shellfish is an untapped resource in New Zealand, but now thanks to the technology, they're able to get in there and clear them out, and they're going to be, starting to sell these on to offshore markets.
Yeah, well, I think part of the government initiative is they want the aquaculture sector to become $1 billion a year industry. So they'll be behind driving this. I imagine this is going to create quite a bit of controversy, wouldn't you say, Regan?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean,
what's the reaction been on Facebook?
Well, the reaction on Facebook has been exactly what I was thinking, and that is, are they just going to, destroy this fishery like other fisheries we've had in the country, rape and pillage, if you will?
Yeah. I know the commercial industry put out a book of history called Hooked, I think it was. I've got a copy at work, about the history of commercial fishing in New Zealand, and it's an indictment on how well we can actually go through and destroy our natural resources. And if you take it right back to the Foveaux Strait oyster days, they used to beach the barks up on the sand, fill them with oysters. When the tide came up again, ship them off back to Bluff and then off to Australia as peasant food. Now, the Marlborough Sounds were also full of oysters, and they've since gone. So we do have a history of destroying rather than managing. And the commercial sector will argue now that, well, times have changed and we're in a better situation to manage it. But all I can say is watch the space and stay tuned, because we'll be back with more fishing madness and mayhem shortly.
And we're back on News Talk ZB. It is Fishing with Crimpy. If you are heading out on the water this weekend, might pay to listen up. It's time for the tides.
Nelson, your high tide today is at 27 past 10 a.m, so that's almost 10:30. 3.9 metres there. Havelock, 13 past 10, and it's a 2.9 metre tide. Crissells, you've got a 4.2 metre tide today, and that's at 10:15. Stevens Islands, 2.3 metre, and that's at 22 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock. Westport, of course, your tides are a wee bit different down there. You've got an 11:35 a.m. one, that's 3 metres, and truck on down to Greymouth, it's 11:37, 2 minutes later, and it's a 3.2 metre tide. Speaking of tides, interestingly enough, we've had soft tides over the the last few days. I went down to Sissy Bay.
Soft tides?
Well, the neap tides, the smaller tides, rather than the big flood spring tides.
Yeah.
And fishing one of my favourite spots, which normally has good current, and you need current to attract snapper, and it was just dead all day. You could have dropped a pilchard off the side of the boat, and it would have just drifted directly to the bottom.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing how things change. Ali, you might as well join the show.
Why not? Hey?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you've been sitting there waiting to get a word in edgeways. I just haven't been prepared to talk to you because I'm still smarting about the age joke that you threw at me. However, you've sampled Sissy Bay recently.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. Yeah.
Yeah, is that your first time down there?
It was. Yeah, it was an interesting time. We had a great time, actually. Yeah.
The kids love it down there?
The kids loved it, yeah. The only hairy part was getting out because we'd had the torrential rain in the morning.
Yeah.
A non-4x4 trying to tow a boat out. It's an interesting sight when you're following it up the hill.
It is. Well, you'd be happy to know that while we're down there, the truck drivers came in and gravelled the road.
Oh, okay.
So you're most welcome to go back again.
Oh, we'll definitely be going back.
Where is Sissy Bay?
I'm not telling you because you want to go there.
Is it Marlborough Sounds?
It is.
Yeah.
All right, that's what you need
do you
to
know
tell
where
me.
French Pass is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not there.
All right. Good.
Close to.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I head to French Pass, and before you get there, turn right, and you hit Sissy Bay. A lot of people think it's a sissy name for a bay, but it was actually named after a girl called Sissy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so a lot of those early names around there, like Elsie Bay, Sissy Bay, were named after one of the original families down there. However, we digress. You're the man, the electronics expert in town, the man from E&L.
Yeah.
So I noticed in the current issue of the fishing paper, you were talking GPS.
Yeah, GPS is often the one that's overlooked. Everyone sort of focuses on the sounders all the time because that's what produces the results on the day. But the GPS is often people see as a side issue, really. But it's one of the most important factors in fishing, really, to be able to mark your spots, get back to them straight away so you're saving your fuel. You can set your drifts using your GPS as well.
So GPS is quite important. I had a GSP once. A German short-haired pointer. Very good in the bush. Good for deer. I digress. Go back to GPS. What is it? Because Regan's looking a little bit befuddled and bemused. I'm not sure whether he's still chuckling over the old joke or whether he hasn't caught up with the rest of the show. But what does GPS stand for?
Global Positioning System.
Right.
And basically there's satellites that are going around the world all the time. They're constantly moving, so you're picking up different satellites during the different times of the day.
Yeah.
And they're transmitting the date, the time, and their position. And from that, as long as your GPS can see 4 of the satellites, it can then, using all sorts of maths and algorithms that are way beyond me, it works out exactly where it is on the Earth, as well as its altitude as well.
You knew I was going to ask you to explain that.
I did.
I can tell by the look in the eye on that qualifying remark.
Yeah.
In the old days when they first came out, there was a margin of error built in because of the American military, correct?
The US military used to scramble it every now and again, and the idea was there'd be a military channel and then a standard channel, and if they scrambled the standard channel, their enemies couldn't get as good a fix as they could.
Okay.
They've now stopped that, and really the manufacturers now say within 20 metres 95% of the time, just really as a bum covering exercise.
Yeah.
Generally, you're within 2 to 5 metres.
2 to 5 metres. Wow. So you're telling me, how far away are these satellites? So it must be, what, 25 miles, 50 miles, something like
at least.
Just
so.
on the
I couldn't give you the exact.
I knew you couldn't. That's why I was trying to help you out. How many are there up there?
16.
That do,
generally, you can see 16. There's more than that now. I think there's up to 24 odd. But yeah, generally you can see 16. That's how many you can receive at one time.
And are those satellites purely there for global positioning?
Yeah.
Systems.
Purely there for the GPS system.
So there are other satellites up there that do other things, but these are specifically
for GPS.
Who owns the satellites? Who puts them up there?
I think it's the US government owns them and puts them up there.
All right, fascinating stuff. We have to take a short break. It will be short. We'll be back in a moment.
It's Fishing with Crimpy on News Talk ZB. We've got Ali Kennett from E&L in the studio.
Talking GPS, the Americans own the satellites that we operate under their system, but you're telling me that the French...
The French have got to say, it's never really taken off, but there is a French system out there. Yeah. Typical of the French, eh?
They do things different. Yeah. They've never won a battle, really, have they? So they continued down that path.
I think they conquered England at one point, many, many moons ago, but we forget about that.
Yeah, but they didn't have a GPS to help them.
No, exactly.
Regan, you had a really important question that you wanted to put to
Yes,
Ali.
I did have a very important question. question. All my questions are very important. I just wanted to know, Ellie, the fish finders that you have, very, very amazing. I just wanted to know, is there one that can actually see things like scallops and...
To a certain
Tuatūas.
degree.
I'm thinking about starting a new business.
Yeah.
Going into
Catch it
Tuatūas.
in while the time's good. Yeah.
Go for the short answer. Go no.
To a certain... yeah.
If you want the long answer, go no, idiot.
To a certain degree, you can, yeah. So not quite the most, but what you have to watch for is you'll see the bottom.
Yeah.
When you're tracking the bottom, you'll see a spike in the bottom, and then
And the modern ones, when the bottom does get thicker, it just flashes Regan.
yeah.
Going back to GPS, what is the benefit to recreational fishers to having a good GPS system?
The benefits you've got, you fuel saving because you're straight back to that spot every time.
Yeah.
So if your mate's given you a spot, you can go straight back to it. If you go over a school of fish, you can just hit waypoint as soon as you go over them, then you go straight back over to where you were when you went over them.
Yeah.
You can set your drift. So you go up to, say you're going to drift over a pinnacle. If you go up to your pinnacle, you just take your engine out of gear and allow yourself to drift. You can watch your trail to see which direction you're going to drift in. And you go 180 degrees away from there and line yourself up so that when you drift, you go straight back over the pinnacle again. Other factors you've got is you can set your trails. So that when you leave a port or a harbour at a safe route, you can save that. So when you come back in and say the fog comes in or at night, you can follow that trail so you know you're following a safe route in and out of the harbour as well.
Last time you were here, we talked about easy routes, so now you've moved right away from that. Of course, I knew the answers to all those questions. I was just allowing you to sound good on radio.
Oh, you're kind.
Aren't I? But presumably the GPS, when you say that you can record these marks and tracks and things like that, that's in conjunction with a chart plotter. So
Yes.
your GPS is not actually your chart plotter, or
No,
is it part of it?
It's the GPS is part of the chart plotter. So this is where some people get confused. A GPS does everything I've just said, and a chart plotter is basically a GPS, but instead of having a white screen, it overlays all that information on top of a chart. So that's the only difference.
Can you got any other questions you want to ask, Regan?
No, this is amazing.
Can you use your GPS, chart plotter, and radar all in one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, explain how that works.
So what you can either split your screen into three and have your sounder and your plotter and your radar all shown separately,
Yeah.
or if you want to, you can actually split your screen in half and have your sounder operating on one half. Provided you've got a heading sensor on board, on the other half you can have your chart plotter with your radar scan overlaid on top of it. So what that does is not only does it show you where you are, it also shows you what is around you.
So can you say, for example, if Regan was fishing over there hauling in 20-pound snapper, and I was over here not getting anything with my radar, chart plotter and GPS system, could I ping where he was and go back there later?
Absolutely. You can put your cursor over his position, hit waypoint, and you've saved his position.
You get your cursor off my position.
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of cursing going on sometimes when Regan's involved. It's all fascinating. Do you see much advancement from where we're at the moment? Because I always ask that question, but every year there seems to be some nuance that comes out.
Yes,
that
with GPS
surprises us.
there's the speed, the processing speed we can do them with. As I say, there's the easy routing, which is now gives you a safe passage in and out. And the other one that's really coming into the fold now is bathymetric charts coming out of your chart plotters.
Oh, you were writing about that, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they've basically done is they've taken the contours of the seabed all around New Zealand, and then in October they're releasing it, and there's going to be an underwater map which is in your chart plotter. So you can just, using your cursor, you can find a rock or a pinnacle, put your cursor over that, find the waypoint and go straight to that pinnacle. Even if you've never fished the area before, you get a good idea of what's there.
God, the poor fish will be cowering in fear. Hey, Ali, it's once again been a pleasure talking to you. Informative, as always. Don't forget the May issue is out now. Great read, good stories, good column from Ali. More of this next week.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
See ya.